On this channel, I've created several top 10 favorite videos related to visual novels, but then I realized something I haven't created one is specifically for my favorite yet rare heroine archetype, the eccentric, weird, quirky girl. I tend to love them for how unique and funny they are, so let's do it. This is my top 10 favorite eccentric, weird heroines from visual novels. At number 10, I have Asane from Nukitashi. Nukitashi has some of my favorite humor in recent history in visual novels. What helps is that the series has not one but two main heroines that are eccentric weirdos. I tend not to like blood-related little sister heroines in anime or visual novels because I just find the idea of incest romance not particularly good or interesting. Thankfully, Asane certainly sticks out due to her very unique personality. She's a very snarky and cynical, toxic gamer girl who's very proud of when she gets to teabag her opponents that she wins against, but then cries to her brother when she loses or the internet eventually suspends her. She also has some funny quirks, like how she communicates through a consent pillow of all things, and has some really funny rants that she talks twice the speed of.
どうしようどうするダメージだよ負傷だよ傷だよ後に引きずるダメージって何後遺症とか残っちゃったらどうする七つ三死んだら生きがいを失う
She also proclaims herself to be a lesbian, which provides some degree of depth, mostly in the sequel. I like how she's helpful to the main group by being the technical support, providing great technology stuff for the main characters. The only reason she's not any higher is because she gets a little too mean to most of the other heroines at times, but otherwise, she's definitely fits the solid baseline of the type of weird girls I tend to like in visual novels. At number 9, I have Aoi from You and Me and Her, A Love Story, commonly known as Totono. This is a girl that certainly knows how to make a good impression. Right when you start off the game, there's a scene where she straddles the main character and asks if he wants to get zappy with her. Followed by this is a very memorable scene where she raises her hand to the sky, attempting to make some Dempa-like communications. Based on what I just said, you'd assume this girl's just straight up crazy and just avoid her. Thankfully, once you get into the slice of life portions, you find out she's just a lot more wholesome than expected, and she's just an extremely socially awkward girl who wants to make friends. But due to the way she acts, obviously it's not very easy for her to do so. Between the entertaining scenes that I mentioned earlier, and these surprising wholesome slice of life, I couldn't help but love Aoi. The only reason she's number 9 on this list is because there's a certain arc with her related to NTR or cuckolding, which is really pisses me off and brought her down the rankings. Otherwise, I'm not too surprised she's probably the most popular weird girl on this list. And before anyone asks, yes, I did choose Aoi in the end. At number 8, I have Shirley from Amairo Islenauts. Ubisoft tends to be known for their incredible presentation, but more importantly, their expertise at making memorable moe heroines. While they don't make weird girls very often, they certainly struck gold when they made up Shirley in Amairo Islenauts. A common Ubisoft trope you see in many slice of life in anime and visual novels is accidentally walking to a girl changing and then in turn leading her to get angry at the protagonist. Literally, one of the first scenes of her in the game has the main character accidentally walk into her while she's taking pictures of herself in lewd positions. That's because she's actually a doujin writer on the side besides being a student, which is definitely a unique hobby to have passion for, especially for a major heroine. Instead of the usual thing where the heroine just gets mad, she copes with her embarrassment by imagining a scenario where she gets raped and gets a nosebleed. That certainly leaves a strong impression for the type of girl she is. However, these funny imaginations of hers do not end there, as she's the type of person that will try to imagine fanfic level doujin stories between her friends, which leads to some hilarious SDs.
これがご主人様の匂いメイドはシャツを嗅ぎつつその手を自らの早急へそして白い腹部を通り割れ目あんたはあんたで早く戻ってこい These scenes are very funny and some of my favorite SDs from any Ubisoft visual novel. Honestly, the only reason Shirley isn't higher on this list is because after these initial scenes, these quirky imaginations of her don't appear as often. She kind of just ends up being a more typical Genki girl, but thankfully, her route tends to have a lot of wholesome moments surrounding her, so that helps keep her up on this list. At number 7, I have Sasa from Marshmallow All the Way Home. When you first meet her, you can probably tell she's at least a little quirky based on her swirly glasses. Then you get to hear one of her self-esteem rants, and you get to see how weird she really is. お刺身に乗ってる菊の花
私とあの美人さんを比べるとか、ほんと調子に乗ってごめんなさい。同じ空気を吸ってるだけでもずうずうしいっていうのに、隠せるとか何様って感じですよね。せめて高校生でもできればあの人のお役に立てるのに、二酸化炭素を無駄に吐き出しちゃってごめんなさい。
Basically, Sasa is kind of a mix of the quirky girl I tend to like with someone who's shy and lacks confidence in herself. Throughout the common route and her route, I quite like the character development she gets around her lack of confidence, which ends up making her the most wholesome character in this whole list. But even when she gains more confidence, she definitely still has some of her quirkiness. Marshmallow has this unfortunate thing where every route starts with some kind of dumb misunderstanding, and well, Sasa, I would definitely say, has the weirdest misunderstanding of the four main heroines. Thankfully, Sasa's consistent, wholesome personality and generally good blend of shy and quirky girl ended up making her pretty memorable and pretty easily my favorite girl in Marshmallow all the way home. At number 6, I have Chiffon from Meteor World Actor. Of all the heroines on this list, Chiffon is probably by far the nicest and most chill. She's one of those characters that's surprisingly normal when you see her at first. It's when you get to know her hobbies and some of her life philosophies, you get to see where a bunch of her quirks come into play. More specifically, her way of conserving money and idea of growing plants in her apartment identify things that make her stick out. Of all the main routes, Chiffon's route is by far the most lighthearted and the funniest in Meteor World Actor. There's straight up a mini arc in her route where she gets addicted to the in-universe version of Viagra because it helps her get into a deep sleep without rolling into a wall. In an H scene during this arc, there's a perfect line from her that shows the polarity of her addiction and her rather quirky way of thinking.
何って、セックスです。
And since Chiffon is by far the strongest physically of the main four heroines, you don't want someone like her bursting walls in an apartment. So while Chiffon isn't the funniest or most bombastic character on this list, she was just quirky enough to count, especially with things I mentioned, plus her thing of liking to eat a lot. And it's just someone who's very nice and fun to be around the whole time. At number 5, I have, well, I guess her canon name is Torako, but the characters in universe just tend to know her as the Kopo or Student Council President. The Majikoi series is a humor-based one with a lot of quirky jokes and characters. But of all the quirky characters, Torako very easily takes the cake for weirdest character in the whole series. Just take one look at her design, you could tell the developers were intending for her to be the strangest one of them all. Things only get weirder with her when you actually get to hear her talk, which is just full of broken Japanese and English.
おはようございます。それが男性のマスターベーション。Why? あんなに気持ちよさそうだったのにストップしてしまうのか?
This girl definitely knows how to get me to crack up anytime she's on screen. The only real flaw I have with her is she's a very minor character and gets maybe like 30 to 50 lines tops throughout the whole series, and doesn't get her own route. She did get an upgrade in Majikoi A5's Takai route, where she actually gets to be helpful and has some surprisingly wholesome moments, which makes me even more bummed out she didn't get a character arc because she seems like a nice enough girl. At number 4, I have Shiina from Sankaku Renai Love Triangle Trouble. Of all the heroines on this list, I think Shiina is by far the most relatable. Shiina is a very, very big visual novel and eroge fan, and is proud to recommend over 100 visual novels to other people. It says something when a few visual novel female fans I know in real life or online straight up relate to her. I guess these are the type of female friends I'd like to make. But anyway, Shiina in the many slice of life comedy scenes always has to relate a situation to something she likes in visual novels. This makes so many of her scenes extremely funny, but also extremely relatable. I could see people potentially getting annoyed of her because she's extremely high energy, having a very loud personality, but I thought she was just very entertaining throughout the vast majority of my read time. The only thing I can say is a flaw is that her route was just decent, romance-wise, but nothing special. But to be fair, this is just a common thing with Asa Project, the developer. They're not really that great at writing romance. They tend to focus on comedy, and well, they definitely do that great with Shiina. At number 3, I have Hinami from A Sky Full of Stars or the Miazora series. Of all the girls on this list, Hinami is what I like to call the most chuny. She's obsessed with things like dark holes and other weird, darker interests, and is just also a very blunt and unique person in general. However, in addition to these funny moments, is that I would say Hinami's greatest strength is how much of a sweetheart she is. She's low-key the nicest character in the whole visual novel series, always willing to be helpful to the people she's close to, whether it's her fellow underclassman Korona, doing stuff for the Six Stars Club, or for Akito, the main character, as Hinami is the only girl that shares the same school as Akito from the Six Stars Club. This wholesome nature of Hinami's doubles in her route, with a great mix of great, funny, weird scenes, but also some great, dramaless romance scenes. Honestly, the only flaw I could think of her is that she's basically treated as a side character to the point her own route in the fandisc Fine Days is a little on the short side compared to everyone else. But anytime she's on screen, she definitely makes a great impression due to her humor and wholesomeness. At number 2, I have Misaki from the Nukitashi series. Of all the characters on this list, in terms of pure humor, Misaki is easily the funniest by far. It's not even a contest. She has so many jokes, whether it's making fun of herself for supposedly being fat, making fun of herself of how she has no presence and no one notices her, how she's into anal, making fun of her friends' quirks, having goofy faces, or just straight up super unpredictable random quotes. A great example is this one scene from the original Nukitashi. Imagine unironically going to a friend hangout, and this is how you greet your friends when you arrive. She's super funny consistently in the original Nukitashi, but in the sequel, Nukitashi 2, they go a step further, with Misaki being constantly hilarious and crazy and random, to the point where she might even be the funniest character in any visual novel for me. While Nukitashi 2 is currently untranslated, here are a few notable scenes where you don't need translated context to see how hilariously weird she gets there.
Big, big. Misa.
Thankfully, Misaki is at least decently rounded out by having something of a character arc and character depth, though it's only a little bit in her routes. If we're just going by pure humor, Misaki would easily be number 1 on this list. However, if you've been following me for a while, you can probably guess what my number 1 is. Yep, number 1 and my favorite eccentric weird girl by far in visual novels is Mashiro from Making Lovers. I've rambled about why I love Mashiro so much in a bunch of videos already, but I'm happy to do it again, just in a different way. Mashiro may not be the funniest character on this list, but she's still really funny. She may not be the most wholesome character on this list, but she has wholesome enough romance moments here and there. She might not have the most depth, but she has enough to feel like a real person. So what does make Mashiro stick out so much? Well, I guess if I had to put it in a sentence, I guess I consider Mashiro the hottest weird girl. I don't just mean in terms of looks, though I do like her relatively simple adult age design and some of her unique clothing styles. I'm talking a mix between her looks and her personality. Making Lovers has this really fun date system, and well, when you go on a date with Mashiro, especially on the first one, when she says stuff like this,
違う。これはラブフィンガーホールド。ガシーン
I can't help but think, wow, why am I not dating a girl like this in real life already? Mashiro in general will definitely do and say some very quirky things to people, but she's just always fun to be around. Her personality is a mix of playful and trolly, but also surprisingly very direct in showing her affections to the people she loves. And what helps is that she's adult age and has similar nerdy interests to me. We consider all that, Mashiro is the poster weird girl, and at the very least, how to make a fictional weird girl appeal to me specifically. And there you have it, my personal top 10 favorite eccentric, weird, quirky girls in visual novels. I know this archetype can be rare and may not appeal to everyone, but I hope this video at least explained why I tend to like these entertaining characters and why I always look forward to finding more. Feel free to leave your opinion on these type of eccentric heroines or what I talked about in this video in the comments below.